Hey, this is Brad. This is the summit. This is Thursday, September 22nd, which means we will be going over the first reading from this upcoming Sunday, September 25th. So the first reading again is from the book of the prophet Amos. So this might be a somewhat quicker episode because I wasn't able to do as much research as I wanted to, or at least much research as I did with last week's readings. But I did do some research and there's still some stuff to go over here. So let me set this up. So this is chapter 6 of Amos. And if you remember back to the person that didn't watch the first few episodes of my show, I'm sure nobody's watching, but we're going through the motions anyway. Last week, the first reading was from the prophet Amos, chapter 8. So we are now traveling back in time. So last week we talked that chapter 8 is one of three chapters, 7, 8, and 9, where Amos has visions of how God is going to punish the nation of Israel. Oh, and let me maybe step back that, the whole book of Amos is about the prophet Amos going to Israel and going, you have lost your way. He's very focused on how there has become a wealthy class that has forgotten the poor, letting the poor be sold into slavery and lose their rights. In the last three chapters, Amos has these visions from God on how they're going to be punished. Now, if we go ahead or if we go to some of the earlier books, Amos in the middle books, which I think is 3, 4, 5, and 6, Amos is now telling Israel, giving them examples of why they're going to be punished, what they're doing, giving them concrete examples, saying, look at you doing this and that. This turn away from this behavior or God's going to punish you. So in this third book, in chapter 6, we go over something called the third woe. I wish I'd done a little more research on the woes, but obviously woe is something that's not good. And furthermore, the reading from this Sunday is chapter 6, verses 1, and then it skips to 4 and 7. Now I'm going to read through 2, 3, and 4 because it's important. And let me set that up. So this woe, I feel like it focuses on two things. One that still kind of goes, hey, you're rich and you're acting rich and you're doing all this stuff that rich people do. But it's also saying, you guys think you're okay. You guys are acting like you're not going to be punished. Like you couldn't be punished by God. Like you're greater than the average person who God gives rules to. And if that average person breaks rules, he gets punished. But you guys are so great, you're kind of above that. So you're not even worried about things. So God says, he touches on that in the verses that that are not part of this reading. So I think it's kind of important. So we're going to read that a little bit. So let's jump into the reading. Again, book of prophet Amos, chapter 6, and we're going to go 1 through 7. That'll be the full reading. So the third woe. Woe to those who are complacent in Zion, secure on the mount of Samaria, leaders of the first among nations, to whom the people of Israel turn. Pass over Calneh and see. Go from there to Hamath the Great, and down to Gath of the Philistines. Are you better than these kingdoms? Or is their territory greater than theirs? Or is your territory greater than theirs? So let me break this down. So Calneh, Hamath, I'm pronouncing that wrong, and Gath of the Philistines are three great nations, which were, great at one point, and then they were overthrown by other armies. They thought they were so great, and they had been overpowered. So God's saying, look at these great cities or these great nations around you. See how they fell? Do you think you're better than them? Like if they fell, you could fall just as easily. What's to protect you from me that didn't protect these guys? So that's what God's calling out those cities for. So then continuing on, you who would put off the day of disaster, yet hasten the time of violence. Those who lie on beds of ivory and lounge upon their couches, eating lambs taken from the flock and calves from the stall, who improvise to the music of the harp, composing on musical instruments like David, who drink wine from bowls and anoint themselves with the best oils, but are not made ill by the claps of Joseph. Therefore now they shall be the first to go into exile, and the carousing of those who lounged shall cease. I like that. The carousing of those who lounged shall cease. Okay, so this is important, and we'll end with this because this is kind of one of the big takeaways I had. God's calling them out. You guys are, letting your wealth get to you. You're forgetting the poor. On top of that, you think you're somehow, I'm not going to be able to punish you, or you're not going to be punished. You're like super confident in what you're doing and not worried that you were breaking the rules at all. And then he goes, therefore, now they shall be the first to go into exile. So then, Amos is in the book of Amos, he's warning them of what's going to come if they don't turn away. So they don't turn away if you've read the other books. And they do get punished. Now, what happens is the nation of, I think it's the nation of Assyria, comes in, takes over Israel, defeats everybody as far as I remember. And what they do is they take the rich into exile and they leave the poor. So the complete, fulfilling what God said he would do. Therefore, now they shall be the first to go into exile, and the carousing of those who lounge shall cease. So then God, in a sense, cleanses Israel. He takes the rich people away, the evil people, the people that are forgetting the poor, and he leaves the poor. And the poor get to restore Israel. And this is an example of how God, what's a great analogy? Refined gold being refined in fire. You melt gold down, and anything that any, say you melt a gold coin down, and there had been some other material on it. That other material will burn away, and gold will not. Gold will remain, and all the rest will burn off. Meaning, refined. God has refined the nation of Israel. He burned off all of the chaff, all of the worthless part of the component, and all that is left now is gold. So again, that's what I learned. This is the book of Prophet Amos. He's preaching to Israel, turn away. You guys are acting how wealthy people do. Be afraid if you don't turn away, and they don't. So that's what I learned for the reading. We'll leave it at that. Hopefully that gave you a little bit more insight, helped me understand the reading a bit more. Again, after going over last week's reading of Amos and getting a whole overview of the book of Amos, I feel like I understand the book much better, have more context. So that's a good thing. Okay, so tomorrow we'll go over the second reading, but hope you enjoyed the show, and hopefully I'm using a new mic. Hopefully it's all clear, and God bless. Thanks.